Hello everyone and welcome to another No Rest for the Wicked video. My name's Brian if you happen to be new here, and we have some exciting new info that Thomas has been sharing with all of us over on the Discord. And a huge thanks to Thomas for dropping in a tag this morning saying that somebody needs to get my attention so we can see and talk about all the new stuff here. And for those of you asking, where's the update? They cannot say yet. I am still pretty confident that we're going to see something in October, but you know, I guess we'll have to keep it locked here. I'm thinking at the end of October, just so we're all on the same page. But the fact that they're talking to us, Discord and on Twitter, that does mean that they're starting to get that confidence in when this date would be. But let's keep going on, because Thomas has a lot to talk about when it comes to multiplayer, when it comes to PvP, new weapons, animations, the world. Hopefully you guys are as excited as I am for the future of this game, because it is looking, well, I guess to use the words from Carol, juicy in this respect. But let's dive in. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for checking out today's video. If you guys like No Rest for the Wicked content, Souls-like action RPGs, that's what you're gonna get here at the channel. If you do subscribe, be sure to sound off in the comments. If you find that subscribe button, I hear it's hidden around here somewhere, and you can always let me know if you find it, as I can welcome you guys officially to the channel. So now let's dive in. Thomas was rather busy over on Discord. Now I've grouped the various different subjects together, so if you actually go to the Discord, you're gonna kind of read it differently than how I kind of try to organize it and present it. Hopefully you guys get something good out of that, because he's talking about multiple different subjects, and so I wanted to kind of group those together. First and foremost, when we're talking about updates and the roadmap, I think this is one of the most critical things that we as players are waiting for. Thomas opens up with, normally we would, but we're planning on something bigger for this update, so it is not just up to us, because he cannot say when this update is. And he goes on to say, folks, Daniel is right, and I'm sorry that we're not crazy in public communication mode at the moment. We're just in the trenches and working on the biggest update that we've ever made, and we're just insanely busy right now. As Daniel said, the Crucible was added as an extra bonus, but it doesn't mean that our roadmap was abandoned in any way. One of the other reasons why we have to keep things a little more quiet is because we'd like the new drop to be a bit of a surprise and have that marketed in a specific way in order to reach a lot of new players as well, so that we have a lot to work with in the marketing partners and to stick with their NDAs as well. But as always, feel free to ping me here and I'll try to answer questions you folks have. Now, in regards to what he's talking about with Daniel, Daniel said, I mean, we did lay out an original roadmap, and sure, the Crucible was not on that list, but the roadmap is not irrelevant because of that. So just keep that locked in your mind. Hoel asks, so just to be clear, last month you talked about the fact that you would share an updated roadmap. Is this updated roadmap canceled or something? Will you share it later? I just want to know what happened to it, if you can or want to answer. And Thomas does reply saying that that wasn't us. That was actually Private Division. They thought it would be the most important thing that they could show off was an updated roadmap, but our initial roadmap hasn't even been fulfilled yet. And that isn't really outdated, and I don't think it makes sense just to throw out random dates on a new one, because this is game development, and it might be that things take longer, or we change stuff, etc. So we'd just make people unhappy if we create unrealistic expectations and then not stick to those. That's the easiest way. Brian chiming in here for those of you who are just joining me on the audio version of this video. Yes, if they do not stick to the plan, like a gamer takes anything a developer says as a hardcore commitment. Not everybody, but enough that it is a pattern that we see within game development. That's why early access, and especially, and this is just my pushback on fan-funded projects, fan-funded projects tend to spin out of control. Early access might change things that you love, and you might feel like, I loved it like this, and then it changed, and now I'm not happy. So that you run the risk of that. Same thing applies to various different roadmaps. For a roadmap to be effective and positive for the developer, it must be accurate, because they take it as a promise, they take it as a commitment, and yes, things will change. And if the developer 9 times out of 10 delivers on the roadmap, I think people are more than okay with excusing that life happens. It happens to all of us. But gaming is, I think, something special, and in a way, for some people, something very sacred that they hold on to. And gamers don't like to be lied to. Gamers really want to have and root for that, and you can see that. If a developer is open and honest and they do the work and people are having fun, gamers will champion them. They'll defend them. They'll defend them even if perhaps the developer did make a mistake. That is just how passionate we are within development. So I'm all in on them doing a roadmap, an updated roadmap. And I do think that we will see an updated roadmap, but the timing in and of itself is really the true question about it. And I think we'll see more, obviously, when this update officially rolls out live. Now, in response to Tasteless, who writes, "So when is the update? You guys are so focused in on getting new players. What about the existing ones?" And Thomas says, "It's not just about focusing on getting new players on board. It's generally just about releasing insane updates that vastly increase the content available and turn Wicked into a more potent and more polished product. So everyone should be happy with that." And to expand on what Thomas is saying, Brian chiming in for the audio people out there, to expand on what he's saying is that marketing to new players also markets to existing players and returning players. Like, it is interesting because seeing an advertisement for a game and all the new features, whether you're a veteran or not, it actually has the same effect. In fact, even when you purchase a product, having people market that product to you makes you feel better about the product. Human psychology is an interesting thing of study, and I'd highly encourage, if anybody's out there very curious, it's always something that we can learn about ourselves in that respect. But yeah, I think that when they talk about new players, there's a knock-on benefit to all of existing players. But that's not to say that other games and this game couldn't have this friction that naturally builds between the new and the veteran. We see that happen from time to time when everything is prioritized, when content is prioritized to just getting in new players. I think you need a healthy balance of both. You want, just like within content creation, just like within these YouTube videos that I make, there's a sense that like I should make a video that generally you guys want to watch. And at the same time, I also should make time for videos that I want to make as well. And that strikes a good, healthy balance of me focusing it on, you know, bringing in and inviting new people to the channel. And at the same time, also thanking you guys for coming back and watching these videos time and time again. Now, Hoel asks, "I don't want to ping any devs, and I don't know if you can answer this question, but is the rework of Magic coming with the next update? Or will it come much later? Or maybe you don't know." Thomas replies, "Won't be in the next update, but we've already went through a design pass on it. And the next update has a specific theme again and will focus on vastly increasing the scope." And this applies to multiplayer. This applies to the Breach update. Basically, their roadmap kind of shifted where they added in the Crucible update in July. And I think that was the right call. I know there's lots of people out there like me who are waiting for more content, more zones. And yes, I'm on board for that. But I absolutely love the Crucible update that they gave, and it has given me a lot more hours. The only weakness is I can't use it for leveling, and I find myself in that weird balance as I try to level up multiple different kind of builds, which is a lot of fun in and of itself, but it does feel like they took an option away from me still to this day. Now, before we get to the multiplayer updates and section of what Thomas is talking about, he does go on to talk about communication. He says, "Folks, we've always had lots of communication before, and we've been praised for how much we've communicated with our fan base and for the frequency of our updates. And that's all great. But now we're at a point where we had a ton of feedback. So we had to just organize it all and schedule it, and are now basically just working it off. So you folks actually get what you want. We're trying to address almost all the feedback that we've seen on the forums, on Discord, here, etc. But now we just need a bit of time to polish the ever-living crap out of our new update. And we want to not give away what it contains just yet in order to then be able to get everyone excited. There's quite a massive amount of content coming with new features and bug fixes on all fronts. I understand that playing the waiting game can be frustrating, but it will always be like that to some degree. We put out an update, you folks play the crap out of it, and then there's going to be a bit of a waiting period before the next big update comes out. So you folks can play some other games in the meantime. The current update we're planning is one of the biggest we'll ship in early access, so please be excited. Regarding in response to you plan on doing another Wicked Inside, Thomas says something along those lines. And I don't actually have any inside information. Last time I got to do a sponsored video from them, which was really exciting. And hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I also just like extrapolated that to be like, I'm streaming the game anyway. Thank you guys for that support. So if something like that happens again, obviously I'd be excited to team up with them in helping kind of share the great message of No Rest for the Wicked. I love this game so much. And we might be wondering just how big this is, or at least what they hope for it. And Farfella puts it into context that I've played 680 hours of this game. And Thomas says, let's hope we can double that and get that up to 1,360 hours in this update. And that would be really interesting to see. I think I've put more hours into No Rest for the Wicked than I've put into any game over the last couple of years. And while I'm nowhere near the 600 and 600, 800, 680 mark, math for some reason today, yeah, it's really great. Hopefully I'm gonna get there. I think that there's definitely 1,000 hours that I could put into this game. For sure, maybe even more, especially if they keep expanding on it, and the future seems bright. Anyway, let's jump into the multiplayer updates. This is where Thomas is talking about all things multiplayer for those of you who are as excited as I am for this update. Folks, multiplayer is coming. If you'd like to help, just write your thoughts on what you'd like to see in the multiplayer experience. Granted, it's a bit hard to do that since multiplayer is so drastically different from other ARPGs and shares more with MMORPGs since you're sharing a realm instead of just temporarily inviting guests to play your single player game. That I think is where Wicked is insanely cool because it creates a real community feeling with players cooperating and building a realm together. But it will also turn off some players who will complain that their friends did this or that fun quest and they missed out. But we got to pick our battles, and my original vision for Wicked was always that players would be able to create persistent shared realms that last longer than just one session. Going on to say multiplayer won't be a separate mode with the new campaign, folks. The idea is to make our current campaign stronger and give players a bit of a different experience if they play together. We scale enemy stats based off of how many players are around, and we also change enemy spawns so you might encounter a different set of enemies or just more of them, more ambushes, etc. if you roam around with multiple people so that you generally get more to kill in multiplayer, which also increases how much loot is available per run. So instead of a new mode for multiplayer, the idea should be that you get to experience the existing stuff in a new way if you play with more folks. In regards to the question from Iglorian, hi Thomas, to answer the question, me multiplayer should, can't, not impose, if you know what I mean. And Thomas does confirm, yes, we will always ensure that you don't ever have any scenarios that can only be done in multiplayer. It's just kind of the game that we're making. Most people will play single player. It is what it is. So punishing people who do not want to play in multiplayer is not a good idea. And I 100% agree with that. I also agree with any kind of quests that will force you into a piece of content that you do not want to do. Destiny was really bad with this, like forcing people into PvP. It never affected me because I enjoyed the PvP, but I get that like not everybody does. And so anytime that they push, they like no exclusive multiplayer, content, great. It just becomes something different. So naturally multiplayer will change the experience. And it's good that they're not going to make that a requirement, because I know some of you just want to have that experience and you don't want anybody progressing that quest. You don't want anything like that. And so for me, speaking on it, is that as long as when you create your realm, you can set it to private, invite only, those giving yourself total control of your realm, I think is something very interesting. And that also then ties into what we talked about in the interview, like, will we allow for custom realms and realm modifiers that could potentially make the game easier? And that is something always worth discussing within the Souls-like kind of ARPG arena, because the value, I feel, is in overcoming that difficult content. The value is in that satisfaction of finally beating that boss. but I know that not everybody agrees with me. And you can weigh in. I'm always curious about your thoughts, so I'd like to have that as just a discussion with you guys here in the comments. But as a reminder, friendly fire is on. Thomas confirms. Again, multiplayer just adds another really nice element to everything because it's just fun to play with other players. So trade with another player and play in the way that complements one another. And friendly fire will be on by default, and the way that he answers that also makes it sound like maybe you can customize that within your realm. Time will tell, and we sure will keep you guys up to date on all of the developments here. Thomas goes on to say, we do not want this to become a Diablo thing where everyone is just constantly spamming the screen with damage. Even in multiplayer, the combat should always feel precise and strategic, and if you run in with your huge sword without thinking, you might just screw with other players' strategies. Thomas then says, we just had one of our testers record a video where they did a plunge attack while being plunge attacked by accident from another player above them. So I'm all in on this. This makes me think also a little bit about Helldivers. I love that Helldivers had friendly fire. I think that's something that can really change multiplayer. I think some of the games have gotten so soft that that's why gamers are growing a little bit frustrated. We've over-convenienced the players so that we can get them all in, and then eventually it's like, well, the game is kind of playing itself, right? Like, what are we doing here, folks? All right, let's talk about PvP, and then we're going to talk about new weapons, etc. Ross says, what about PvP? Arena, open world. Thomas replies, Arena is the first focus of regular PvP. This will be like real 3D fighting games, of which there aren't that many out there. And since it's 3D, the environments you fight in will actually matter. Going on to say the PvP is going to be interesting because they ultimately have over 200 weapons across all the tiers, and saying that I'm not sure it's actually going to be possible to balance that. It's like making a fighting game with over 200 characters. Now, one idea they had regarding balance is to have two PvP modes, one where you could use any character you made and one where you have to pick from a story character that they have, and then they could just balance against one another. And I would echo that. Like, one of the things that I had pushback against Destiny's competitive scene is that they had this competition playlist. I think that it should have been curated. That's exactly what it is. Like, whether you're playing through a storied character that has a preset build that they can balance against the other characters for competitive play, for that ranking play, and then you could have a separate ranking, separate kind of list that is that free-for-all. Take your character, it's your character, your gear, etc., and then you can go nuts and have fun. I'm all in on that kind of, perfectly fine with that level of kind of division. There can absolutely both systems, and people can find fun in both. And speaking of competition, Lucky7 is asking about that, and Thomas says, we'll have to see. It's impossible to say right now. Regarding will they be able to team up with others via like a 1v1 or 2v2? Is it strictly just 1v1s? Thomas says 1v1 and 2v2 plus free-for-all are all planned. Free-for-all obviously is going to be the more chaotic of the environments or the modes. Then when asked, Tom, a quick note, PvP can spar, so you can spar your friends and just not strangers, and Thomas confirms, yes, you can actually just PvP against your friends. You do not have to play against strangers if you do not want to. And then Lucky asks, so the realm PvP, they're going to be cross realm with this? And Thomas confirms, yes, you'll be able to actually compete with others, players, worldwide. Like, I think that's really exciting. How about some weird, funny, cool cosmetics that we can get from PvP? Razax, and Thomas confirms, yes, they're sure going to have PvP specific rewards. We're generally doing an entire reward structure pass at the moment. So does that mean we're going to get a transmog system? The community wants to know, Lucky7 in this case, and it is not planned. And Thomas has confirmed this before. We actually talked about it in the interview that I got to sit down with him. And I actually am on board for no transmog. I know that's not the popular opinion, but I think it makes gear more interesting. And when you don't have it, because essentially you just kind of, find the look that you want, and that's about it, as opposed to seeing some real progression in your gear style. But you're welcome to disagree. It's just an opinion I have. It doesn't mean I'm right. Anyhow, when asked about an anti-cheat, I think this is where things get interesting. Cheating is always going to be a problem to a certain degree. Our net code will boot you and ban you if you try to hack, but for any game that you might be able to use AI to play it, and there's nothing that really can be done about that. And when asked what kind of detection are they going to use, Thomas is not going to tell you, and nor should he. We do not want to know, because that's just going to make it easier for the people who are going to cheat. So that is going to be something that is going to be interesting in the long run. Big Leon asks, better not be any kernel level stuff though, and Thomas says no, there's not going to be any of that crazy crap in this game. And then finally, Thomas does say we won't have some crazy DRM thing as well. All right, let's jump into the new weapons discussion, mostly all around fists, because when people are asking, like, are we seeing any kind of fist stuff? And Thomas says, on our fist weapons, I'm mostly referencing what other fighting games do. So you're going to have your typical Shotos, etc. And then going on, I just asked Arthur to change one of our fist weapons runes to mimic Terry Bogard's Buster Wolf, and I'm being told that we actually have some footage of these animations, and don't those just get you excited? I'm so I love seeing things in motion. Hopefully you guys are excited as well. I don't know if I'm going to be a fist to cuff kind of guy, but I tend to kind of like go in with the big swords and the magic, but that's just the theme that I like. He also says that they do need the bazooka follow-up to this Buster Wolf style, and then going on to say, yes, our gauntlets will actually have all unique animations. And then when asked if any of the previously teased weapon types have been removed, Thomas has confirmed, no, they're not removed. They are still working on them. Adding in new weapons is like adding in a whole new class. So it does take quite a bit of work, and that also applies to the magic rework. They've done a design pass on that we talked about in this video itself, and we're going to see that kind of trickle out at some point in the future. And as somebody who's enjoying casting and blowing things up, I'm really excited to see what they decide to do with the magic system. And this could also kind of connect into the traits and the skill tree system that they've also said that they're working on, but I would push those further out in the distance for the time being. And finally, to wrap up the video, new cities. When asked about, are there any other cities in other than Sacrament, Thomas has confirmed Havenport, Tyr, and Marion Village. Then going on just to make people aware, Sacrament's still going to be the main hub of the game, but the other towns are planned as well. So that means, I guess, as a part of the 1.0 release, we're going to be looking at 4 towns, and I think that's going to be interesting. You have Sacrament, Havenport, Tyr, and Marion Village, along with many, many more zones. So it's going to be fun to see how that plays out. Now, as we wind down our videos, it is time for our message of hope. And I thought today would be a good day just to kind of have a real check-in. How are we doing? How are we holding up out there? I don't know how you guys have been doing. I know that it can seem a little bit overwhelming. And that's why I want to kind of talk about this to a degree. Maybe you've heard the internet isn't real or Twitter isn't real. It isn't real life. The thing is that it does feel real enough. And so that phrase in and of itself is an interesting thing because it is both true and false at the same time. And I want to kind of equate this to like if you were eating something. If we only consume the internet, it's like we're eating food, but our body is getting no nourishment. And this is, I think, something that's impacting our minds, you know. And so that being said, I think it's important that we fill our thoughts with good things, like with really good motivation, really good, you know, mental health practices, like not being hard on yourself or beating yourself up over past mistakes, but looking at those mistakes to see what we can learn from them and make good and better decisions. You never truly fail unless you give up on yourself. You never truly have lost, because that's just a factor of life. And so every failure, every setback can be an opportunity, and it might not seem like an opportunity in the moment, but that's just a moment in time. So I want to encourage you guys, let's fill our minds, our hearts, our thoughts with some really good things, especially if we do consume the internet quite a bit. I put limitations on mine. So if you have a phone that does this, I set it on my phone that I can only consume so much of the internet per day, and it will count down. It will let me know, hey, you're coming up on that marker. I set my limit to 2 hours a day max, and that is, I think, a decent amount of time. And you too can find maybe some value in that. Maybe you want to give yourself more time. Maybe you want to give yourself some less time, but you do have those tools at your fingertips. And so today's challenge that I want to just put out there on you, if you want to accept it, that's fine. Listen or read anything from Tolkien or C.S. Lewis. Let's root ourselves in something that is true, that perhaps is just beyond our eyesight. And that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the writings of Tolkien and the writings of C.S. Lewis. There's many things out there that you can go read and consume. And this can even be driven off of YouTube. I have found recently a great YouTuber, The Deep Lore. Hopefully I'm not butchering their name. I'll see if I can't tag them in the description of this video. He does a lot of things on Tolkien, sitting back and listening to, and a part of me in a way feels a little bit of mental refresh as we've dived into who is Tom Bombadil. What powers does Gandalf have? Honestly, really enjoyed that, and maybe you will as well, but that's going to be the challenge. Let's feed our minds with something rooted in kind of an ancient beauty, and I think that will be a good practice that we can all, at least if nothing else, step away from the chaos of our daily lives and perhaps even our feeds. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for your time today. Hopefully you got something good from this video, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. And yeah, until then, guys, take care.